Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to share my process for creating these two masculine cards. I have used Kaisercraft 5 1/4 inch square cards for both of them. They come out of a pack of cards and the colour is brown. I also used Kaisercraft 6 1/2 inch paper pad and the paper range is Attitude. I don't really have a plan for this card, so I've collected up a selection of dies that I think I might use, but as I say, I don't have any cemented plans, so anything could happen. I also decided that I wanted to use some vellum on this card. I thought on these two cards I'll try and use something that I've got in my stash I've had for a long time. I keep meaning to use and haven't used for ages, so on this card I'm going to use some vellum. I look through the pad and select an assortment of papers that I think I may want to use. Once I've made my selection, I start cutting the papers to attach to the card. The first paper, pattern paper, is 5 inches by 5 inches because the card itself is 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. This piece of spotty paper that I've cut is 5 inches by 3 inches. The vellum is 5 inches by 1 3/4 inches, and the strip with the numbers on it is 5 inches by 1 inch. I then decide to tear the edges of all of the papers to give them a distressed look. So I tear the edges and then I ink the edges of all of them. I only tear and distress, only tear the tops and bottoms of the paper. I don't tear the sides. The sides remain straight. When I had a look at the card layers, I decided I needed another layer and I wanted to punch the edge of one edge of the new layer. So I punched the edge of this piece of card and then I cut it to size. I cut it so that it was 5 inches wide by, well, probably about 3 3/4 because I did tear the top edge of that as well. So when I finished tearing it, it worked out to be about 5 inches by 3 1/2 inches. I then decided to use some dies to make some embellishments for the front of the card. I used the Kaisercraft Polaroid frame, the small one. I used the Kaisercraft film edge and the Dynamics, just the ticket. I cut those in some of the same patterns that I'd already used, but I also used some of that checker plate paper that you see there. I used that to back the Polaroid film. My next job was to ink around the edge of all of those papers using a black ink pad. I will not do that whole process on this video. I will come back to you when I have completed it. Time now to assemble my card. I'm going to use my hot glue gun to do that. So I'm layering the papers onto the card. The second layer, the one that I punched, I decided to put some foam tape behind that. I also like to add some hot glue to the foam tape so that I know it's going to stick there permanently. This next layer, the red spots, is also attached with foam tape. The card has quite a bit of dimension and looks good. The vellum, I've used hot glue to stick that down because I know that I'm going to put that strip of paper over the top and you won't see it. The embellishments are attached using just hot glue. There's no foam behind any of those. I have a few sheets of greetings that I've printed out on my computer that I keep on hand. I've selected one for this card and I'm going to, well, I've inked around the edge of it and now I'm just going to attach it to that little ticket, and that will be that card finished. I'm using the same paper range and the same card base for this card as I did for the other card. So I go through the paper pad and select some papers that I want to use. Now that I've made my selection of papers, I start to cut them down to size. I cut this piece of camouflage paper 5 inches by 5 inches. This mustard paper I cut to 4 inches, 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. And then this is my burlap that I'm going to use. It's from my stash, my equivalent to the vellum in the other card. I cut that to 3 3/4 inches by 4 inches. And then I fray the two edges that weren't already frayed. And then I decide that I want to change the papers around, so I cut the camouflage paper down to 4 1/4, excuse me, so that that would be the paper that's behind the burlap, and the mustardy coloured paper would be closer to the actual card base. Gives it more of a colour break between the two. Here I'm going through the papers trying to decide what paper to put on top of the burlap that's going to be a bit of a contrast to all the other colours that are already on the card. I decide on this paper here and cut that down 3 inches by 3 inches to be the layer that goes on top of the burlap. Using this checker plate cardstock, I cut a strip that's 5 inches by 1 3/4 inches, and then I cut a fishtail in each end, coming in 1/2 inch. I'm going to use my Spellbinders Labels 1 die to cut 2 labels to go on top of this. I'm going to cut one in the mustardy colour that I've got in the background and one in the checker plate, and the sizes I use are the 2nd to smallest and the 3rd to smallest. I cut them out using my Big Shot. Now that I have all the pieces for my card, I use my distress tool to distress them all and ink around the edges with black ink. Once again, I'm going to use my hot glue gun to assemble my card. The hot glue gun, I think, is the best way to hold the burlap in place. I have not had much luck with trying to stick it down with double-sided tape or glue. The fishtail banner has foam tape attached to it, so I also give that some hot glue treatment. The larger of the labels also has foam tape attached to it, just to give the card a bit more dimension. Once again, I selected a sentiment from my printed sheet. Because it was white and I didn't want it to stand out that much, I used some distress ink in Vintage Photo and a foam block and just lightly coloured it so that it wasn't white inked around the edges, and then used some double-sided tape to attach that to the card. That finishes this card. So I hope you enjoyed my video today. If you did, please subscribe and share with your friends. I'd also love it if you left me a comment. If you click the bell next to the subscribe button, you will be notified each time I post a new video. Thank you.